Come on in, brother. The floor is yours for the next 40, 45 minutes.
All right, do we have audio?
We got audio.
All right, we're clear for takeoff. Hey, everybody, my name is Lindel. I'm a recovered alcoholic and a grateful member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, practicing the principles of the program as outlined in the Big Book in the first 164 pages. And before I get started, first off, I'd like to welcome Mike or Michael with 30 days. Congratulations on your 30-day milestone, my brother, and Christina. I believe you had 45 days, if I'm not mistaken. What a, what an accomplishment, right? It all starts with one day. Um, I want to thank Eric for asking me to come out and share with the group tonight and everyone that's being of sober service behind the scenes and everyone that's making the meeting possible tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about a touchy subject, right? And I don't know why it's a touchy subject, you guys, really. Um, Let me do a little disclaimer first off, right? Because on page 29, right, I got in trouble doing a share where I was recorded once. And I told myself, I'm not going to make that mistake again because I ended up, challenging the 11th tradition. And I love the traditions, right? I love the principles. I love the 12 steps. Don't know much about the concepts. I've been exposed to them. I've been to some workshops. I do understand a little bit about them, but it's more like spiritual trigonometry for me. It's a little above my pay grade. And I'm just not that into politics. Okay, so but it's something that I hope to grow into as I continue to stay around the rooms and learn more about our program, right? Um, so on page 29, it says hmm, each individual shares in their personal stories and describes in their own language and from their own point of view the way they establish their relationship with God or a higher power or God of your own conception, right? So I'm not, I do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. I am not an expert on the steps, nor am I an expert on the traditions. I'm just another sober member. I'm a student of the program, just like you, many of us. And all I try to do is I try to grow in understanding and effectiveness, which is what our 10th step tells us to do, right? And it tells me that once I recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, right? Our 12th step, right? Having had, past tense, a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message. What message? Well, the message is the 12 steps. How do I know that? Because if you have a copy of the third edition of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it tells you on the cover page, on the inside of the flap, about midway down, our message is located in the first 164 pages of the Big Book. That's our message. Our traditions protect our message, right? And it tells us in one of the forewords, right, that our literature preserves the integrity of the AA message, right? The concepts perpetuate our message. So those are our three legacies. You know, I didn't care about the traditions. Um, I didn't even really know anything about the traditions because I just saw them as a sheet on the wall. You know, when you go to a meeting and you see the posters behind the podium, you got the steps on one side, you got the traditions on the other side. Well, that's for the public view. But those aren't the principles of our traditions, right? That's a condensed version. The principle is the long form of the tradition or any step that's presented in its entirety. I'm not a teacher, but it does say in our literature that the sole purpose of an AA group is the teaching and the practicing of the 12 steps. This is not my opinion. This is what the big book says. So if you have a problem with anything that I say tonight, I want to invite you or encourage you to take a 10th step, a fourth step, or talk to your sponsor, right? Don't blame me. I have the right to be wrong. My sponsor has the right to be wrong. The group has the right to be wrong. You have the right to be wrong. We all learn and grow together. So, you know, I need to pray a little bit. God, please lay aside everything I think I know about this disease, this program, these steps, this book, myself, and you, God, so that I might have an open mind and a new experience with this disease, this book, this program, these steps, myself, and especially you, God. Please show me the truth about the physical allergy, the mental obsession, and the spiritual malady. Please let me see the truth. Amen. You know, I always ask God to let there be a decrease in me and an increase in whatever that power is for us that we believe in, um, so that there's a decrease in me and an increase in it, because I'm just a conduit. I'm a messenger. So if you got a pencil or a piece of paper, take some notes, right? Because I'm being recorded, right? Um, and I want to challenge you. Don't take my word for it. Please, don't take my word for this. Look it up for yourself. The Big Book is not a novel. It's a textbook. It tells us that in the preface of the book. It says this has become our basic textbook. What is a textbook? If you're new, I didn't know any of this stuff when I came. I didn't understand the language or none of it. This comes as a result of coming in and out of the room since 1985, having had 5 years inside the rooms between 1990 and 1995. Took a drink in the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and went out for 27 years. And came back to the rooms, right? So I was dry for those 5 years. I had never recovered because I had never worked the steps. You can't relapse from something you've never recovered from. I'll say that again. You cannot relapse from something you've never recovered from. Back in the day, they didn't refer to it as a relapse. That's really a treatment center term, right? And thank God for recovery homes, right? I've been through 33 recovery programs, right? The longest recovery program I was in was 2 years. It was an attack gestalt therapy program. Um, I don't know how I made it through, but I did. I actually graduated from the program. And within a week of leaving the program, I was drinking again. After 2 years, I was a model client. I had went through all of the phases of the program. I had became the coordinator of the program. I was like a staff member. So what I'd learned in those experiences of going in and out of treatment facilities is that treatment facilities are not about recovery. They are about discovery. Alcoholics Anonymous or other 12-step programs are for recovery because that's how we treat the illness of alcoholism. Because this is an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and I do respect our traditions, I'm going to try to keep my discussion confined to my problems centered around alcohol and alcoholism. Although I have had drugs are a big part of my story. I've done enough cocaine to kill a small horse, as Freud might say, right? I'm a trash can addict. I was an intravenous drug user for 2 years with heroin, a crystal meth intravenous drug user for 3 years. I got off the heroin by using crystal meth. So I cross addicted myself, right? And then I don't even want to talk about sex, right? Because the book tells us about that. We don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct, right? We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. But there's an inventory for that too on page 69. It's 9 simple questions. So this is a textbook. What is a textbook? A textbook is a book that's designed to transmit information under the assumption that I, as the reader, do not understand anything about the subject. What's the subject if you're new here? Alcoholism. So my sponsor told me when I was new, he sent me a brand new big book because I had been around the rooms and I thought I knew something. I was introduced in 1985 to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. My sobriety date is 11/05 of 2020. So I just recently celebrated 5 years for the second time because I went out after 5 years and I went out for 27 years. And this time when I came back, I was badly mangled. I had brain damage, heart damage, kidney damage, lung damage, liver damage, and I was on my deathbed. They were about to induce me into a coma, or they felt as though if I had went to sleep that night, I would have slipped into a coma where they would have had to place me on life support until one of my doctors or my daughters made a decision to disconnect me. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to get a message across to you, right? A message of hope and a message of recovery. You know, my brother and I, we were discussing this subject about 2 weeks ago because the word recovered came up. And people were like throwing a little bit of a hissy. Oh, you don't recover around here. Really? Really? That's not what my book says. What book are you reading? I'd like to know what book you're reading. You got to be careful about the things that you hear inside of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, especially in the meetings. Listen, I'm going to say some things that are going to be controversial, might piss you off. I'm starting to get hair standing up on the back of my neck right now because that's how passionate I am about this program. People like to think I'm a big book thumper. I'm not a big book thumper. I'm just passionate about the program. And I believe the black ink that's on the white pages of the big book, period. If I didn't, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Why am I in a 12-step program and I'm not willing to practice the 12 steps of recovery that's outlined inside the big book? Oh, I know. It says in the forward to the first edition, and besides, our way of living, of course, I could have had a V8. Our way of living has its advantages for all. So you don't have to be an alcoholic or an addict or any of that stuff to recover, right, from whatever it is you're dealing with, or to get the benefits from this program. The neat thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the grandfather program of the 12 steps, is that our program, our 12-step program, has proven, it's been proven that it works. And we weren't selfish with our program, our 12 steps and our 12 traditions. We shared them with other programs like Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, right? All the other 12-step, we have like over 220 12-step programs out there today as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've learned to respect the house that I'm in. It's not that I don't have those other issues, because I definitely had a gambling issue. I definitely had a drug issue. I definitely had a sex issue. But I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. And because of my first tradition, my third tradition, my fifth tradition, and my 10th tradition, I adhere to the principles of the traditions. I had to learn to do that because when I first come in, I have these inherent rights. Nobody can put me out because of the third tradition. I'm a member when I say I am, and the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's the short form. Let's take a second for a minute. If you have a book, it might help, right? So you could follow along with me. But if you don't have a book, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to be somewhat brief on this, but don't worry, I'm not going to get lost because it's not going to take long to try to get you to understand the difference between recover, recovering, right, and recovered. If you want to recover, that's fine. If you want to be recovering for the rest of your life, that's fine. If you want to say you're recovered, that's fine. I don't care what you call yourself. For me, for me, I don't want to be recovering for the rest of my life. If I'm going to be recovering for the rest of my life, I don't, listen, you guys told me that you had a solution to the problem of alcoholism, right? You told me you had a way up and out. I don't know about you. I'm a low bottom alcoholic. Listen, don't get it twisted. I don't care if you come from Park Palace or Park Bench, right? Alcoholism is alcoholism. It's not about what you drank, how much you drank, how long you drank, what happened to you when you drank, all of those consequences that come about. That has nothing to do with you being an alcoholic. What makes Lindel an alcoholic? And I try to keep the focus on myself. My sponsor tells me that. Keep the focus on you, Lindel, and all will be well with others, right? Because sometimes we talk about these subjects and they're very sensitive. And alcoholics are very sensitive people. To keep the focus on you and all will be well with others. So I'm talking to you about my personal experience. I'm telling you how I developed and established a relationship with a power greater than myself. And I'm telling you about my hope, my strength, and my experience. My story will not keep you sober. Your story is going to keep you sober. I'm properly armed with facts about myself. I don't know anything about you other than what you tell me. That's why we go through the 12-step process of recovery outlined inside the big book, so that we can become properly armed with facts about ourselves. So let's look at this thing about being a member. It's on page 562, I think it is, in the back of the big book, where it lists our 12 traditions. And let's just take tradition 3, for example. It says the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's it, that's all. But let's flip over to page 563. All you have to do is look to the other side. And let's take a look at the long form of tradition 3. It says our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism, not alcohol and drug addiction, not alcohol and sex addiction, not alcohol and none of that. Alcoholism. I know a lot of you guys, oh, it's all the same thing. Alcohol is just no, it's not. Alcohol is not a drug. Boy, that's gonna ruffle a lot of feathers right there. Alcohol is not a drug. Quit listening to everything you hear in a meeting. These are people's personal opinions. My sponsor says the only opinion that matters in this room or in these rooms is the doctor's opinion. If it's not in the big book, it's not a fact. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was written by alcoholics for alcoholics with a solution for the illness of alcoholism. Period. Point blank. That's it. That's all. End of story. Stop. You got other issues? Fine. We got another house for you. We're not an alcoholic and in these rooms, but it's an open meeting. I get it. I get it. I get it. But you dare not go to a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and start talking about alcoholic and drugs, because they're going to shut you down. I come from old school AA, guys. This book was written for the real alcoholic. We got a lot of alcoholics that are new to the program today, and they got a lot of drug issues. They got this crystal, they got all this stuff out there, this fentanyl, and I mean, come on, 178,000 deaths, just alcohol related last year alone, nationwide. 170,000 opioid deaths, related deaths, 17,000 illicit drug use deaths, right? Alone, all last year. Another, I think it was 70,000. You might can Google some of this stuff, but I looked up some of the stats, and all this, people are just dying. They're just falling off left and right. And I won't even talk about all the sexually related diseases and stuff. And it's a lot of stuff out there, you guys. But we're just talking about alcoholism in these rooms. That's all we're talking about. And I'm talking about recovering from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. That's all. I do not have a problem with alcohol today. If I take a drink, I got a problem with alcohol because I set off the craving. They say it's not a cure. It's not a cure, right? The 12 steps is not what they call a panacea, right? Um, it's not a cure-all for everything. So it says our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence, we may refuse none who wish to recover. So if you are an alcoholic who has a drug problem, you're welcome here in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you are an alcoholic and you got a sex addiction, you are welcome here in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you are an alcoholic and you have a heroin addiction or issues with it, we don't, no, come on in, right? It says, hence we may refuse none who wish to recover, nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money or conformity, any two or three alcoholics, not alcoholics and us, alcoholics gathered together for sobriety, not clean time. That's Narcotics Anonymous. So you got to be careful about the language. I had that problem too, because I went through 33 treatment facilities and they brought Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and all these other fellowships through there. And I got confused about the language. So when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was coming in talking about, oh, my name is Lindel, and I'm an alcoholic I'm an alcoholic and a bunch of things. Not understanding that I was stepping all over its traditions. If you're not there yet, that's okay. I don't want you to be turned off by this conversation, right? Do what you need to do because believe me, I'm not no saint. I made these mistakes too. It's just that somewhere along the line, I got curious about the traditions. And I heard somebody do a share on the traditions, and they started telling me how to respect the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and not violate and challenge the traditions. And I became interested. And so I got a sponsor. I got what they call a service sponsor who took me through the 12 traditions, just like they took me through the 12 steps. You don't know what you don't know. So it says, for sobriety, they may call themselves an AA group, provided that as a group, right, they have no other affiliation. This is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not affiliated with Cocaine Anonymous. We're not affiliated with Narcotics Anonymous. We're not affiliated with the courts. We're not affiliated with hospitals or churches, right? We work in cooperation with them. Big difference. Big difference. You're going to do what you're going to do. I'm not here to change you, right? But when you run across sometimes an old timer, you know what I mean? A bleeding deacon, and he wants to shut you down. He's not telling you that you're not welcome here. He's saying, please respect our house. That's all he's saying. Please respect our house. Because we want the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to be here for those alcoholics that have not found their way out yet. Let's look at page 561. If you got your book, I'm going to read this. It's the appendices, right? And this appendices 1 is about the AA tradition. And it says, to those now in its fold, Alcoholics Anonymous has made the difference. Alcoholics Anonymous has made the difference between misery and sobriety. Sobriety. And often the difference between life and death. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, of course, can mean just as much to uncounted alcoholics not yet reached. The group must survive, or the individual themselves will not. It says, therefore, no society of men and women ever had a more urgent need for continuous effectiveness and permanent unity. That's our first tradition. Unity. That's our most cherished tradition. You can find some of this information if you study the 12 and 12. It says, we alcoholics see that we must work together and hang together, else most of us will finally die alone. It says the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous are, we AAs believe. The best answers that our experience has taught us this. to those ever urgent questions. How can AA best function? And how can AA best stay whole and so survive? It's about the survival of our program. So that when my daughter, my grandson, my granddaughter, my great grandkids or my great great grandkids, maybe they don't have a problem with drugs. Maybe they don't have a problem with sex. Maybe they don't have a problem with, you know what I'm saying? But they're an alcoholic. I want the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous to be there. And for this, I'm responsible for carrying this message. I got a lot of issues, man, aside from alcohol. But I don't bring that into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I just don't. Because this program has helped save my life. Watch this. Let's talk a little bit about this recovering thing, right? While I'm going through the 12 steps, I'm recovering, right? I can wish to recover because I spent 25 years on the street, sleeping up under bridges, right? Wondering what was wrong with me. You know what I mean? Living on the side of freeways and bushes, eating out of trash cans, panhandling for change from the stores, all that stuff. So it says in the forward to the first edition, we are 100 men and women. And before that, there were 10, right? And then there were 20. And then they saw that they had something going and they wanted, hey, how can we harness this thing and put it into, you know what I mean? So this first 100 began to tell their stories on how they had recovered, because these first 100 recovered. And my sponsor says, circle the ED on recovered at the ed part of the word. Every time you read, circle the ED, recovered. I don't know about you. They say that I don't always agree with everything in the big book, but my sponsor tells me that if anything that I say that's not a direct quote from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or anything that cannot be reconciled through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous or the conference approved AA literature, and the literature goes through a very lengthy program. I mean, they study this stuff and they vote on it to make sure that what they put in here, right, is solid. It's solid. So the literature preserves the integrity of the AA message, not people's opinion. A 100 men and women have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. What I don't recover from, you guys, is humanism. I'm a human being trying to learn how to have that's what I heard, a spiritual experience. And that's not correct. I'm a spiritual being trying to learn how to have a human experience. See, but you see how that got twisted? So if I had said that and not corrected myself, you would have went with what I first said. So I've been taught to question everything, not just to listen to what I hear in the meetings, but to go do my own research. So yes, I take notes. I listen to what people say. Today, I listen very carefully because my life is dependent upon it. Misinformation, disinformation, right? People's opinions kept me out there for 58 years. 58 long years, and landed me in the hospital for 6 months with brain damage, all these different medical issues. All my physical organs were shutting down, right? So I've been through the ringer with this thing, and I'm not saying none of this stuff to scare you guys. My experience is my experience. Examine your relationship with alcohol. Ask yourself what it's doing to you and what it's doing for you. And if you're honest with yourself, right, and you see that you got a problem, because it says if you're drinking and having problems, or having problems and drinking, you might be an alcoholic. And they give a description of step 1 on page 44, right? And that's how important step 1 is. It takes up a third of the big book. The first 43 pages, including the first paragraph on page 44. And it says, if when you honestly want to quit drinking entirely and you find that you cannot, or when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic. It still doesn't call me an alcoholic. It says you're probably an alcoholic. So it's asking me to do some research here. And it tells me some stuff here. You guys watch this. It tells me that there's a couple of tests that you can take because you don't have to keep going in and out of the rooms. That relapse, you call it, it's really a slip. The old timers referred to it as sobriety loses its priority. That's the acronym for it. I've never recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body because I've never been through the 12 steps. So all I am is I'm in between drinks. And because I've been through these treatment facilities and they give me this language and they tell me, oh, you're relapsed, you're in relapse mode. Really? I'll share with you my personal experience with this. My late ex-wife developed a cancerous brain tumor. I was 2 years into the program. Actually, I was 18 months. And I was trying to go get my family back. And they thought it was benign. They cut it out, but they found out it was malignant. It had metastasized and ran her entire body, got into her bloodstream. She collapsed after she had rang the bell. She had went through her chemo. She was back at work. She was on the job for 2 weeks. So she had recovered. And then she collapsed. And then she went back to the hospital where she stayed for the next 6 months until she expired June 22nd, 1989. So she actually had a relapse because she had recovered. That might be an extreme case, but it's the same thing when we talk about the 12 steps. What is the book tells me, in fact, between steps 1 and 9, that we have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. The first 3 steps are basic conclusions. For steps 4 through 9 are the action steps, and steps 10, 11, and 12 are the growth, the maintenance, and the discipline steps that we use to maintain our daily review contingent upon our spiritual maintenance. Right? You know, step 3 is really powerful because it tells me that I get reborn. The doctor's opinion is that the message which must hold and interest these people must be a message of depth and weight if these people are to recreate their lives. And I asked my sponsor, what does recreate mean? It says it means you get a chance to start over. My life has started over, you guys. I'm no longer sleeping up under bridges. I'm not on the side of freeways living in bushes. I'm not eating out of trash cans. I'm not standing in front of liquor stores panhandling for change. I'm not sleeping on a dirty mattress in an alleyway. There's alcohol in my home downstairs right now. My daughter drinks. My son-in-law drinks. It's been here for the last 5 years. All of these promises have come true for me because I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It's a lie. We do recover around here. It tells us on page 98, it says, burn into the consciousness of every man and woman that they too can get well, regardless of anything or anybody, provided they follow a few simple rules. Trust God, clean house, and help others. So people will tell you don't get well, but the big book just told me I do. Let's take a few pages and look at where it's talking about recover, because there's like, recovering is only in the big book once. Do your own research. Once. Recovered is in there 25 times, at least. 25. So we're talking about the forward to the first edition. Then let's turn to page 17. Right? Let's see what that says. Page 17. All right, so it says, there's a solution, chapter 2. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands. First there was 100. Now we got thousands, right, of men and women, right, who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. Nearly all have recovered. ED, circle the ED. They have solved the drink problem. Until I know what the problem is, there is no solution. And just because I know what the problem is doesn't mean I know how to solve it. I have to have some help. Right? All right, let's go and let's take a look at page. I'm going to come and kind of do this quick because I'm running out of time. I got enough time to finish it though, because I'm going to leave you with I'm going to leave you to do your own research. I'm not here to convince you of anything. Page 132. Jump over to 132. Let's see what that says. When it talks about we're not a glum lot, right, and all that kind of stuff. All right, so page 132, and almost just before the last paragraph. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 lines up from the bottom. It says, outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over the seemingly tragic experiences out of our past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered. Circle the ED. We have recovered and have been given the power to help other alcoholics. Remember when it says, the therapeutic value of one alcoholic helping another without parallel? That's what it talks about in that foreword, right? And it says, recovery begins. Recovery begins somewhere in the world when one alcoholic sits down with another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope. All right, let's take a look at page 90, because you know what? No, let's go to page 18. Look at 18 real quick. All right. We're talking about a sponsor, or we're talking about a spiritual guide, someone that's going to take you through the process. And a lot of people think that they're qualified to take people through the program when they're really not. Because the book is telling me very precisely, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, I try to carry this message. I'm only trying after having been through all 12 steps. I can share with them, if I've been through step 1, I can share with them my experience on step 1. If I've been through step 2, I can share with them my experience on step 2. But I'm not trying to take somebody through the steps, and I haven't been through all 12 steps. And it says this in our literature, right? It says in AA, the reporting is clear and unmistakable. I'm not in the book right now. This is a pamphlet, which is conference-approved AA literature, and it's a member's eye view of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the pamphlet is P41. It says in AA, the reporting is clear and unmistakable. Here are the steps we took. That means I need to go through all 12 steps in order, in their entirety, and to their completion, right? Before I am entitled or allowed to report on them. It tells me on 164, I can't transmit something that I haven't got. It tells me to see to it that my relationship with God is right. And then great events will come to me and pass for countless others. I'm staying with the book, you guys. I'm not going, everybody works this program in their own way. But if you're anything like me and you suffer from, I'm a real alcoholic. I'm not that guy that's on page 20, the moderate drinker. And it says for those that cannot drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether, how to quit entirely for good, for once and for all. So this program is not something to be one and done. It's designed for living. It's a way of life. So it tells me on page 18, but the ex-problem drinker, there's 3 requirements here. He's got to be an ex-problem drinker, or she's got to be an ex-problem drinker who has found this solution. What's the solution? The solution is the 12 steps. It's the 12 steps. And it says, who is properly armed with facts about themselves. That's the second requirement. So that's the third requirement. No. So the ex-problem drinker is the first, who has found the solution is the second, and properly armed with facts about themselves is the third. 3 requirements. And they're an ex-problem drinker. I don't drink anymore. How come I keep going in and out of the rooms, right? I got a year, and then I go out, and then I come back, and then they say, well, you just need to work with people. So now I'm taking people through the steps when I haven't had an effective spiritual experience myself sufficient enough to bring about freedom from the illness. So my sponsor told me something about, he said, there's a template in the contents of the book. I have to study the book, you guys. I can't just read it. It's not a novel. The contents tell me this, right? It tells me the preface down to the forward to the 4th edition is just a brief AA history. The doctor's opinion, right, down to chapter 3 is more about alcoholism, is step 1, the problem, and self-diagnosis. Because I can't diagnose you as an alcoholic. This is a self-diagnosed disease, right? Step 2 is chapter 4, we agnostics. That's our solution. Step 2 is the solution, right? And then it tells me chapter 5, how it works, down to chapter 11, a vision for you, are steps 3 through 12. And these are the steps I must take in order to make the solution a reality in my life. What does it look like to be recovered? Go to page 25. You know, I don't do this thing perfectly. Don't misunderstand me. But here's where I know that I'm different. My recovery is different than yours. Here's where I know that something has happened to me, because it says, unless these people can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of their recovery, in the doctor's opinion. I need an entire psychic change, something I can't bring about by myself. So if what makes me an alcoholic is because I'm suffering from an illness of a twofold nature, the body and the mind, there's also this spiritual malady that's coupled with the restless, the irritable, and the discontent. That, to me, I identify as the ism, the alcoholism, not the alcoholism. And my acronym for that is the internal spiritual malady. Everybody has an internal spiritual malady, even non-alcoholics. So that's not diagnostic of alcoholism, but the physical allergy and the mental obsession is. All right, so here's what it looks like. Page 25. Therefore, when we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, once again, I don't have a problem with the liquor today. I have a living problem. I don't know how to live life on life's terms. Right? It says there was nothing left for us to do but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools. That's the 12 steps again. Laid at our feet, we have found much of heaven and have been rocketed. That's our fourth dimension. After going through the steps, right? We get rocketed into the present. I'm not worried about tomorrow. I'm not worried about yesterday. I'm living in today. I'm dealing with life today on life's terms. And I have a set of spiritual tools that those discipline steps, right? 10, 11, and 12 that I practice on a daily basis, which gives me a daily reprieve, right? Against the insanity of the first drink, the thought of the first drink, the thought, right? And it says, I've been rocketed into this fourth dimension of existence, which I had not even dreamed. Now, here's the key. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. Then there's an asterisk, go to the back of the book and read the spiritual experience, right? Because it's different for everybody. But it says, this thing is revolutionary. It's extreme. It's not a 360. It doesn't take me back to the point of origin, and then I go back out again. It's a 180. I turn and I go the other way. That's the contract that I've entered into with the third step. That's where I get reborn. The old man has to die so that the new man can live. If I'm constantly holding on to my past, guess what? I'm not able to let go of my past, so I can't turn and embrace my future. I still got the same mind. That's what the 12 steps are designed to do. They're designed to change my thinking. So watch this. It says it has revolutionized my whole attitude towards life, life itself, towards my fellows, you people, towards God's universe. And it says the central fact, and a fact is just a concept whose truth can be proven. You got to get a dictionary when you read this stuff, guys. Can't just take for granted you know what the words mean. I know you're smart. That was my problem too. I was too damn smart for my own good. I was reading from the surface. In the English language, it's the most complicated language on the face of the planet, because behind every word, there's 3 different meanings. You got to find the right word to fit the context of whatever it is you're reading, right? So it says, the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our creator, whatever that is for you. The second step doesn't say God. It says a power greater than yourself. So welcome to my atheist friends. Welcome to my agnostic friends. Welcome to believers and non-believers alike. You don't have to believe in anything. You just have to have a willingness to believe in something greater than yourself. All right, and it says, the certainty that our creator has entered into our hearts, not our minds. You see, because I know a little bit, my time is up. Because I think I know a little bit of something about God, because I've been to church, doesn't mean God's in my heart. All right, and it says, and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. Here's the psychic change. Alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experience, life-giving. To me, these occurrences are a phenomena, just as much as the phenomenon of craving. They don't happen in everybody. It says they appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men and women, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them, begin to rule them. So, you know what? Have you changed? Have you had an effective spiritual experience? Have you had the spiritual awakening that the book promises? Listen, I came in here 300 pounds, 380 pounds. I'm 155 pounds today. I've been that way for 5 years. I had a gambling problem. I no longer gamble. I had a sex problem. I'm a sexual pervert and a deviant, but I've been abstinent from sex for over 5 years now. Not because I'm a monk or I'm trying to join a monastery, but because I don't see women. I see women differently. I'm not a misogynist today. I don't see women as mere sex objects for me to be able to relieve my sexual frustrations upon. They're human beings. They're somebody's mother, somebody's sister, somebody's auntie, somebody's cousin. I'm sick, man. And I come in here and I want to be a womanizer. Come on, really? Have you really changed? Um, I pretty much have kind of covered what I wanted to cover. Um, I'm gonna go to page 90 and I'm gonna end with this because when we talk about a sponsor, make sure your sponsor's recovered. Make sure whoever you got that's taking you through this work is recovered. I just gave you some ideas on these pages 25 and 27, but look at 90 and I'll close. Right here on 90, it says this. It says, then let his family or friend ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you, the sponsor or the spiritual guide, right? Then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. Circle ED again, the ed, recovered. Not everybody inside of these rooms has recovered, guys. Not everybody here inside of these rooms are here for recovery. They're here for relationships. They're here for jobs. They're here for, I don't know what they're here for. It's none of my business. I'm here to recover. My sponsor will say this, and in closing, he says, if you're in a 12-step program, he said the greatest crime that a man or woman can commit against oneself is to steal from oneself and not realize that something's missing. And I said, what does that mean? He says, if you're in a room, if you're in a 12-step fellowship and you're not practicing the 12 steps of recovery as outlined in the big book, then you're stealing from yourself and you don't even realize what's missing. I have my relationship back with my kids. There's a swimming pool 15 feet outside of my front door. I live in a great neighborhood. There's not a single piece of trash on the ground. I come from living on the dirt, on the side of freeways and bushes, standing on freeway off ramps, holding a sign, veteran, homeless. You know what I'm saying? Help, please help. 9 years in the military, 9-year banking career, 5-year workers' compensation career. Flunked out of college, right? With like a 3.9 GPA for 3 years straight. 9 units short of a KDEC certification for the state of California in drug and alcohol technology, right? 9 units short of an AAS in social work. Listen, none of that. Self-knowledge availed me nothing. But I have a wonderful life today that doesn't consist and consume me with alcoholism. I had a double kidney transplant surgery 2 years ago. I've been stuck to my home for 5 years. Yesterday, I just left a convention, an Alcoholics Anonymous convention. For the first time in 5 years, I've been able to go outside the house, man. Right? And I got to see people that I knew back in 1985 when I first came to these rooms. They got 34 years, 40 years, 45 years. I would have had those years too, but I didn't know I was an alcoholic and I didn't know how to treat my illness. I didn't know that I could actually recover from this thing. They recovered, man. They're driving brand new cars. They bought houses. They got wives and new families. We recover here, man. You do not have to go in and out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Come all the way in, sit all the way down, get a home group, get a big book, get a sponsor or a spiritual guide, someone who's recovered from this, right? Someone who's been through the 12-step process of recovery, someone who applies these principles to their life. The very life of the alcoholic their life is dependent upon the obedience to spiritual principles. I don't come here because, well, I do come here because I want to, but I come here too because I have to. I need to be reminded on a daily basis, man, what I suffer from, right? Because if I lose conscious contact with that first step, I lose conscious contact with my higher power. And if I lose conscious contact with my higher power, then it's all bets are off, right? I become restless, irritable, and discontent. The ism sets in, right? Internal spiritual malady. And I look for ease and comfort. I look for it in jewelry. I look for it in property, money, property, prestige. I look for it in women. I look for it in car. I look for it in a lot of things. Alcohol, drug addiction. Today, I'm happy on the inside, man. It's an inside out job, not an outside in job. Alcoholics Anonymous is giving me back my life. It's giving me back my family. It's giving me back a voice. It's giving me some power, man. I don't have any power in and of myself. It tells me that if I lose power, control, and choice, I lose all three and I never get them back. What I get today is I get empowered by this power that operates in my life to be able to do what I need to do on a daily basis. So I don't, that ego that I get when I come back in here, it continually tries to reinflate itself. It needs to be deflated all the time. Because all of a sudden I forget that it's not me that's doing this. It's not God that's doing this. It's me that's doing it. And that's what I come in here telling you people. And it sounds good. It looks good. And you say, I want to be independent. Really? Well, if you be an alcoholic like me, my ego is not my amigo. That's what I've heard said in these rooms. My ego is not my amigo. Be careful about your ego. Stay humble inside the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a gift. It's a gift from God, and what we do with the gift is our gift back to God. My purpose today, my real purpose today is not to stand on a corner and look in four directions and not have anywhere to go. My purpose is to be of maximum service to my higher power and the people about me, whether in or outside the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's real simple. I was all over page 62 before I got blindsided by page 63. Hey guys, we do recover around here. Don't what they call it, the words, I don't know what the semantics. Don't get confused with the semantics, right? My words are powerful. That what I speak into the universe will not return unto me void. It will accomplish that for which it was intended or purposed. So if I constantly tell myself I'm not recovered, that I'm recovering, then I'm going to be recovering. But if I tell myself I've recovered because I have recovered, I've done the work to recover, then I'm no longer recovering. I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and I've been given the power to help others. That's why I work with others, right? That's why I work with others. Because I want them to have the same peace of mind, the same freedom, the same joy, the same happiness, right? The same serenity that I found here in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't need anybody in my life today. I'd love to have a woman in my life today, but I don't need her. I'm content with me. I'm content with me and my relationship with my higher power. I'm content having a fellowship of people that I can go to, my sponsor, you people, right? People like Eric and say, hey, you know what, man, I'm hurting today. I got something going on. Can we talk for a minute? And you know what, me and Eric, we hash it out. And Eric just tells me about his experience with it, right? And if he does, I had a guy come to me, and I'll say this and really be quiet. Guy came to me and he asked me for help. He said, man, I really enjoyed the message I heard from you. And I said, okay, well, how can I help you? He says, I need a sponsor. He said, I'm in a program. I said, okay, well, I didn't ask him what was wrong with him because that would have been being judgmental. I says, well, tell me a little bit about you. So I wanted to get to know him. And he started talking to me about he had been in and out of prison, in and out of prison. And I knew this guy was above my pay grade. I said, listen, man, I've never been to prison. I don't know how to help you. I says, but you know what? Let me talk to my sponsor and let me see if he knows somebody that can help you. And my sponsor said, no, I can't help him. He says, but send him over to your grand sponsor. So I called my grand sponsor. My grand sponsor said, yeah, I got just the guy for him. I called that guy. I gave him that number. And he says, yeah, man, the guy, we're hooked up now. And thank you for the help. And he's found somebody that's properly armed with facts about themselves, right? I don't have to help everybody. I just have to help one somebody. One somebody. So I'm not one of those guys that my ego, I need to be able to be talking to 100,000 people and have 100 sponsees behind. I'm not. That's not who I am. I'm a quiet, recovered alcoholic, right? You know what I mean? If you hear something, right, that you're attracted to, and if I can be of assistance, sober service, that's my responsibility statement. When anyone anywhere reaches out their hand for help, I want the hand of AA to always to be there. And for this, I'm responsible. My name is Lindel. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I hope that something was said or read or shared will help you to just understand we recover around here and we do get well. Don't let nobody tell you differently, right? You do not have to bounce in and out of these doors. Come all the way in. Do the work, man. Do the work. It says quit drinking for 1 year. That's the test. See if you can quit drinking for 1 year. It says if they're a real alcoholic or very far advanced, there's scant chance that they'll be able to pull it off. And if you quit drinking for a year and you do the work, you probably won't want to go back out because you will have had an effective spiritual experience as a result of the steps. But if you don't, guess what? Your misery is gladly refunded. Now you can go back out, but at least you've been through all 12 steps, and then you can say you relapsed. Then you can say you relapsed, but don't keep telling yourself you're relapsing. You're not relapsing, right? You just haven't made up your mind that you want to quit for good, for once and for all. Thanks, guys.